DJ to a much lesser degree. At some point, you just say, you know what? Uh, Maybe we'll just turn the page. I don't know if Baltimore's there yet, but I think they're getting closer. And by the way, everybody's budgeted, and we'll bring in our buddy Matt Verderame. I see him in the green room. Everybody's budgeted it, so it's going to be really difficult to find a spot. Um, that's a sticky situation, Jody.
All right,
Sticky situation.
Then let's get a good national writer to give us his breakdown of where the Baltimore Ravens and the other 31 teams who've been alerted by friends of Lamar Jackson to the fact that he's actually a free agent. He's got everybody making calls for him, except he can't get a contract done. Give us the latest on the Lamar Jackson situation. Here is from Sports Illustrated now. Matt Verderame joins us on Birds 365. How you doing, MV?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Doing well. Good. Congratulations on the new gig, by the way. I've been enjoying your stuff at Sports Illustrated. So number one, a little bookkeeping there. But if you heard us, Matt, that Lamar Jackson story is getting crazier and crazier. What the heck is going on there?
That story has taken on a whole life of its own. You know, when you have the NFL sending out emails and memos about a guy named Ken Francis who lives in Florida, who may
of
or
course,
may not
Florida man. Yes, of course.
Right. There was only one state that he could possibly live in. But when it starts coming out, like, yeah, maybe they're negotiating, maybe not. At this point, and I've been saying this for years, but we're really to this junction. Like, the man needs an agent in the worst way. Like, and a real agent, not like some random run of the mill. Like, yeah, maybe this person can rep me. Like somebody who has done big contracts, real contracts over the course of time. Without that, he is shortchanging himself. Whether he wants to admit that or not, that's up to him. But I believe he would have been signed years ago. Had he had an agent. Because that agent would have said, there's no way you should be playing on the end of this rookie deal as it is. And if you need to hold out, fine. The other thing we all know is reality is, guess what? If you have an agent, you can control the narrative around you a little bit. He cannot do that. And it is costing him dearly. It's a problem. It's been a problem. And now it's really a problem, even more than it's been.
You mean, are you like suggesting that maybe an agent planted a seed yesterday with Adam Schefter that Ezekiel Elliott would like to be a Philadelphia Eagle? You mean that other duty that an agent has above and beyond exactly negotiating contracts, and that actually happens in the National Football League? Are you actually suggesting that, Matt Verderame?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so I guess it's a perfect example. Like the Zeke thing, like he'd like to be with the Eagles, the Jets, or the Bengals. First of all, I think everybody and their mother is looking to be with the Jets, at least at the rate we're going here. The Eagles, and then like people have floated out the Bills. The Bills have like 4 running backs on the roster right now. How many running backs are they going to have?
And they don't even give it to any of them at any point.
They drafted James Cook in the second round a year ago. They've got Naheem Hines. They've got Damian Harris. They're going to have Ezekiel Elliott now too. Why don't they just bring in Derrick Henry and they can run like the wing T? They got 4 running backs at one shot. It's sometimes, and look, I get it for fans. There's no reason to think about this stuff, but like, the narratives that we all talk about are obviously shaped by things that happen on the field. I mean, that's 99% of it. But there's also stuff that, yeah, it comes from leaks from sources. It comes from agents. It comes from teams at times. Now, if you're doing your job, you can kind of figure out what's BS and what isn't. But, if Jackson had an agent, there would be some of this like, hey, look, you know what? Here's what's really going on. Here's why my guy's not getting a fair shake. Right now, the Ravens can leak whenever they want to, and they can kind of control the narrative and the conversation around this whole thing. And then yesterday's memo just made it. It went from being you need an agent to this has become a tire fire. Get yourself some real representation. And I think that's where we sit as of this morning.
Let me ask you this. If this continues on for another week, 2 weeks, month, and there's barely any teams talking to Lamar Jackson, does somebody jump in and go, all right, now we take our one shot. We can actually get value here. that because no one is playing it, and Lamar's got to be getting worried, and yeah, we might have to talk to him directly, but we might be able to get him. We look at him as a $45 million quarterback, and if we give him 38 and we guarantee 98% of it just so we don't get ourselves in trouble with the league. We don't guarantee all of it. We get a bigger percentage than anybody else has offered him. Is this going to open up someone for a shot and just going, wow, we've got a chance to do a deal that's just too good to pass up?
Maybe. I think right now, I think anything's possible. Now, that being said, I don't think he would sign for less than probably at least 45+ million a year. I don't think he would, and I don't think he should. But here's the risk that we all know he runs, okay? If he plays next year on the tag, and he has another year like he's had the last 2 years, which includes an injury of a month or 6 weeks, you're just going to have teams that go, look, we love you. You're hurt a lot. Like, at some point, that's going to be a thing here. I mean, I think it already is to some degree.
It is.
It's really going to become the main narrative around this. What if the Ravens, either through his, if he were to get hurt again or just struggles, what if they don't win a playoff game next year? And then you have another year where you're like, okay, the team was maybe competitive, but what did it really amount to? All that stuff starts to add up. I think, let's put it this way. I think that we're now a month out from the draft. If you're a team that has interest in him, I think you wait till after the draft, because I don't think he's signing with Baltimore any day soon. And if you wait till after the draft, let's say you're the Colts, okay, which is just an example to use. I don't know that they're not going to find their quarterback in the draft, but let's say they don't. Let's say somebody trades up to 3, and you go quarterback, and they get to the Colts, and the Colts are like, yeah, you know what? We're not feeling taking Will Levis at 4, so we're going to take Will Anderson. All right.
Right.
You're the Colts. If you're Chris Ballard, you got the cap space. You might sit there and go, you know what? We'll give you our next 2 first-round picks, because now those picks are going to be with Lamar Jackson already playing for us. And we're going to be a 10, 11, 12-win team, especially in that division. And now, instead of you getting the 4th overall pick, you're getting a pick like, 22nd, 23rd, right? So I think it changes the calculus. And I think if you're a team that is in that type of a spot, I'll tell you another one. I don't know that they would do this. If you're the Jets, if this whole thing with the Packers goes on and on and on, and the Packers won't budge, at some point, just talking to Lamar Jackson becomes leverage. So there's another team you look at and go, okay, would they do it? Would they consider it after the draft? Miami becomes eligible. Now, I don't know that Miami can make it work from a cap standpoint, but would they consider it? I don't think so. They seem pretty committed to Tua, but, weirder things have happened.
At what point is there a point? Because Baltimore's been pretty consistent, Matt, that they want Lamar. They want to pay Lamar. They want to give a contract extension to Lamar. At what point is there a point when they throw up their hands and say, this is ridiculous, we got to go in a different direction? Because I think that would change things drastically if Baltimore started saying, you know what, we don't want this guy anymore.
Oh, no question. I mean, this is the one quandary I've always thought the Ravens might have after they put the non-exclusive tag on him, because they can lose him for 2 first-round picks if they don't match any offers. If you're Baltimore, if you're Eric DeCosta, do you have a deadline in your head at some point here where you go, all right, you know what? We got to get him signed. But if we can't, we cannot be in a position here where we're going to lose this guy for 2 first-round picks. Like, at what point do you say, maybe it's time to move on? Maybe you say, look, Lamar, we need you to play ball a little bit, but we're going to move you. We're going to move you on. Now, the problem becomes they're daring him right now to find that contract he thinks is out there.
Yeah.
They're basically saying to him, look, it's not just us that won't give you this contract. Nobody's going to give you this contract. There's not a team out there that's going to guarantee you $250 million. If you can find that team, go find that team. And if they offer you a contract, then we'll either let you go, obviously, or we'll match it, and you'll get it either way. I wonder, and I don't know that it's even this offseason. It probably would be next offseason, where if they just say, look, you know what, we're done with this. We're done with this. The problem becomes to do that, like they can't trade him right now. He's not under contract.
Yeah.
They have to, and it's not like the NBA where you see all these sign and trades all the time, right? I mean, that doesn't really exist. So I think there is a point where they get there, where they get really frustrated and throw their hands up. The problem becomes if you trade him off the tag, like let's say you get past July 15th, right? And you trade him, that whoever acquires him can't give him an extension until the following off season. So I don't think you get anywhere near the value that you would normally get for him because you're getting him for 17 games. It's just the Ravens have kind of allowed themselves to be painted into a little bit of a corner here, and Jackson's not doing them any favors.
And a little bit more of the painting in the corner angle. And I promise we'll move on from Lamar after this. Who the hell is going to play quarterback if this guy is just as nuts as he seems to be? And said, I'll sit home. You guys, I can always, I don't need to have retirement money for the rest of my life. My pride and my making a statement is more important than me actually playing football. And it'll be a year of me not taking hits. What if he sits home? Who's going to be the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens? Hundley is a restricted free agent. Anthony Brown, is that what you're telling me? Somebody's got to play quarterback for the Ravens this year. Matt V, who's it going to be?
I think it would be Tyler Huntley. But I think, look, this is where you get into now. You say, okay, well, the predictable thing is that Lamar's not going to leave essentially about $2 million a game on the table. Like, he's not going to do that. Nothing about this has been predictable.
Right.
Nothing about this has been what you'd expect. So you could get into a situation where he wants to kind of make a point and he says, you know what, I'm going to sit out the first 4 games of the season. Okay. What if he sits out the first 8 games of the season? Like, your season's over by that point. I don't care if he comes back for the last 9, right? I mean, I tend to always err on the side of people don't want to give up a lot of money. Like, I think in the end he would probably play, but this again has been extremely unique. I also look at it and say, if you're him, do you sit there and say to yourself, I know that if I get hurt this year, this is a major problem for me. I cannot afford to get hurt, so I won't play. And I'll make the money up on the back end. I don't know. But here's the other part of this. He's never made major, like generational money like he will this year. I mean, if he just plays this year, he's set up for life, and so is his kids and his kids' kids. He's been on a rookie deal to this point. So I think he will play, but this whole situation's gotten to the point of there's clearly even more than meets the eye. I mean, there is more going on in Baltimore right now. And I think for me, my antenna went up when he wasn't at the wild card game in Cincinnati. They can sit there all day long and deny that was weird and deny that was true. That's weird. That's a bizarre thing. Okay, if the Eagles are in a playoff game and Jalen Hurts has a sprained ankle and can't play, Jalen Hurts is going to be in the stadium.
Yeah.
He might be up in a box. He's going to be in the stadium.
Yeah.
That was a weird situation that he wasn't even in the building that night. So, I mean, it's just a very convoluted situation.
Is Jimmy Haslam still the most unpopular guy in the NFL?
I mean, Dan Snyder might hold the title for a little bit longer.
Put Dan aside. Yeah.
Jimmy Haslam's got the AFC crown for sure. I mean, owners were irate when he signed Deshaun Watson to the deal he gave him. I mean, and frankly, more because of the fully guaranteed money than it was like you're signing this guy with all these off-field allegations.
Oh, yeah. It's all guaranteed money.
Right, because owners just care about, let's face it, in most cases, the bottom line. The bottom line in that case was, how could you give this guy $230 million guaranteed? You're out of your mind. Jimmy Haslam's not going over well, and I don't think that's changed.
All right, we'll move on to another tough to predict his actions and movements quarterbacks. He might not match up to Lamar, but coming in out of the darkness, maybe he does. The whole Aaron Rodgers to the Jets conversation and the moves that have been attached to it, and Aaron going on McAfee's show and announcing he's going to be a Jet, except he's not yet. Everybody has had an opinion on who actually has more leverage as we sit here, right now. And when does leverage change and when does leverage move? What's your Matt Verderame calendar look like for leverage between the Jets and the Packers?
First of all, I think I'm going to dream of the word leverage. If I haven't already at some point subconsciously. I've heard it enough over the last couple of weeks. All right. So here's what you're dealing with. On one hand, you've got the Jets, okay, who cannot go to Zach Wilson. Like I was just talking on a national show about this the other day on the radio, and I was trying to explain to people, like I'm from New York, you guys obviously down in Philly. Like if you're not from that area of the country, you don't understand. The Jets cannot go back and go, hey guys, listen, you know what? Zach Wilson, he's okay. Like the fans will burn the stadium down. There's no scenario where that's happening. Maybe that happens out like where I am now in the Midwest, and people go, okay. No, not in New York, not in Philly. Like you can't do that. So the Jets are, to use the term we used earlier, they're painted into a corner. They need Aaron Rodgers. Okay. The Packers, however, are painted into a $58.3 million corner because that's the option that is due to Rodgers prior to September 1st. Okay. The Packers do not want Aaron Rodgers. They have been open about this. They are not going to pay him $58.3 million, which is why I think in the end, the Jets have more leverage here because the Jets could always pivot to another quarterback should they really want to. We talked about Lamar Jackson. They could always say, we're going to go after Lamar. Now, it's expensive. I don't think they'd want to do that, but they could. I think there's two deadlines here. One is a draft. The other one is the beginning of training camp. If you're the Jets and you make the move before the draft, I think the Packers, like the earlier you do it, I think the Packers have more leverage because you're further away from that balloon payment of $58.3 million. The closer you get to that, like ask yourself this. Do the Packers want Aaron Rodgers showing up to training camp this year? Do they really want that?
No.
They want Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field on July, whatever it'll be, 25th, saying, hey, guys, fire away. I'm a $58.3 million backup quarterback. Ask me any question you want, and I'll give you any answer. It's in my head because I don't care what the team thinks of it. They don't want any part of that. So I think the closer you get to camp, the more leverage starts to go to the Jets side. But in the end, guys, I'll tell you what, I think they're kind of haggling over nothing. I think this is going to end up being a day 2 pick. And I think it's going to be another pick on top of that, probably in the same range. It's a conditional. I wrote a piece, not to plug myself, but on SI a couple of weeks ago where I asked 3 people who either are currently or are formerly in major positions in front offices and said, look, if you're Joe Douglas, what would you give up? And every one of them said the same thing. I'd give up a day 2 pick, and then I'd give up a conditional pick or 2, and that's where I'd land, but I wouldn't give up a first. I think that's where we're going to end up. I think, and by the way, the Jets have 2 second-round picks back-to-back after the Elijah Moore deal.
Right.
Give them one of those picks. Give them a conditional 3 next year that turns into a 2 or a 1 based on how much money the Packers eat, or if you want to go like how far you go in the playoffs, fine. But I think that's what this is going to end up being, and I think that's fair for both teams.
Fair enough. Let's take it back to Philadelphia, Matt. A much smaller scale, but I thought it was interesting. Darius Slay, CJ Gardner-Johnson. I thought it was interesting from this point. I think Drew Rosenhaus, who was Slay's agent, was very honest with Slay. The Eagles said the Eagles need to get that cap money down. They said, you know, we'll guarantee you your $17.5 million. Maybe throw a little bit on top of it. Turned out to be 23, 22, somewhere in that range.
Right.
And I think Drew said, look, I mean, you're 32 years old. You're still playing at a high level, but $18 million on an extension is not going to be there for you. On the other hand, I don't think CJ got good advice. Ends up signing a 1-year, $8 million deal. It's really $6.5 million. When you look at the misvaluation, not evaluation, but the misvaluation, the league tells you all you need to know, Matt. And they didn't think CJ Gardner-Johnson belonged at the Jesse Bates level, to say the least. Is that just everybody in the NFL got that wrong? Everybody outside the buildings? We sometimes get this stuff wrong. How do you sort of gauge what happened with CJ Gardner-Johnson?
So, I mean, you're right. You're right. I think sometimes You're correct in the sense like we're wrong sometimes too. We just misevaluate players, and we like players maybe more than a team does, or maybe teams think the guy's really good in a certain scheme, but he couldn't play another scheme. I think in this case, I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, as you put it, John, got bad advice, and you see that sometimes where you look at a guy and go, "How the hell did that guy end up on a 1-year deal for X amount of money?" Well, because at the beginning of free agency, he was getting, and I'm not saying this is the case with Gardner-Johnson, but he was getting offers and he didn't take them because he thought he was going to get bigger offers. And then those bigger offers never came. There's a rule of free agency that most agents will tell you. The biggest money, the best money, it's right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And the further you go, the less money everybody's got into the cap. And you start getting into a situation where like now teams fill needs, teams don't have as much money. And now, back to that word leverage. It's like, hey, guess what, guys? Like nobody's going to give you that 4-year, $60 million deal. So now you got a problem. I look at Orlando Brown as an example of that. Last year, the Chiefs offered him, by my reporting and others, they offered him 6 and like 140. But in reality, the last year was a joke. It was really like 5 and 91. Okay. He did not sign that contract. Okay, fine. They negotiated this offseason. Couldn't get to an agreement. He hit the open market. I think a lot of people thought he was going to get 20 plus a year. Wasn't there. Ended up signing for 4 and 64. Now look, he's going to be able to eat. He's okay. but he left a lot. He left almost $30 million on the table, and you kept hearing this thing push like, well, you got this big signing bonus. The Chiefs offered him the exact same signing bonus a year ago. Like if he signs that deal, he's got $27 extra million. He does, but he didn't. He, in my opinion, did not get great advice. And I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a terrific player. But Jesse Bates, when did he sign? He signed immediately.
Yeah.
The first day of free agency, he signed. Hey, 4 years, 64, sign me up. That sounds great. I think Chauncey Gardner-Johnson had an opportunity potentially, without knowing what offers he had. Like you would think he would have had some better offers, maybe overplayed the hand a little bit. That's how it reads to me.
All right, Matty, I know you're a Chicago guy these days, former New Yorker like yours truly, but Chicago guy these days. And this is one team that John and I disagree on. I actually think their general manager's done a decent job. Did he kind of hang Justin Fields out to dry this past year? Yeah, he did. And he got the first pick overall in the draft out of it. Although they don't use the word as much in the NFL as they do in the NBA. They tanked, and they tanked successfully because they wanted to get a high draft pick, doesn't get any higher than number one. And he's already parlayed that into the deal that he's made with Carolina to get himself DJ Moore and that much more draft capital. Matt Verderame's read and the Chicago fan base read. Do they think that the new regime, after a pretty poor first year, but maybe a staged first year, is that much better going into year number 2? Do they like what the new Bear regime is doing in Chicago?
Yeah, I think most people do. Most people, I think, are pretty happy with the fact that, look, you know what? Okay, everybody was understanding of what was happening last year, and it worked. Now, the question's going to become for me, that in a way was the easy part. Okay, you had all this cap space and everything. Like, okay. Now what do you do? Their offseason to this point, I thought was interesting. I liked their trade with Carolina. In fact, I actually liked that trade for both teams. I thought that was the rare win-win. Carolina is going to give itself a shot at a franchise quarterback, and it has to. Chicago got a bunch of picks and got DJ Moore.
Yep.
So I like that move for them as well. I thought free agency for them was a little bit uneven. Like I actually like TJ Edwards a lot at that contract going over. I think he's a good player. You guys obviously know him very, very well. I think he'll be a nice fit in the middle for them. I thought paying Tremaine Edmonds 4 years and $72 million was somewhat insane. Like I think Tremaine Edmonds is a nice player. He's a good player. I get he's 24 years old. You just signed TJ Edwards. Like you don't need to invest in 2 off-ball linebackers.
$92 million, Matt, in all-ball linebackers.
18 a year for Tremaine Edmonds. He's made 1 Pro Bowl. Like, he's not Fred Warner here. I like him. He's a good player. But he wasn't the best linebacker on his own team last year. That is a lot of money to go give it. And then Nate Davis, guard coming over from Tennessee, he's a quality player. I don't mind that in the sense, look, they overpay a little bit, in my opinion, maybe, but they have to protect Fields. I can understand that. They had the money. Okay. I can live with that. But I didn't like that they didn't fill in a lot of premium positions. They didn't go out and get a lot of edge help. They didn't go out and get tackle help. They didn't. That's where I walk away and go, all right, you better do work in the draft. Now, they got the picks, so maybe they will.
Yeah.
But they better. So I think the Bears, to me, the grade is still incomplete. I need to still seal it with the Bears a little bit of like, all right.
I always say,
draft.
I always say with the Eagles, look, nobody gets everything right. Nobody. But when the Eagles make a decision, I usually get the thought process behind it. I think they're a very smart organization for the most part. I don't get the decision making in Chicago. And to your point, look, it's easy to demolish something. Nobody hires the demolitionist to rebuild the house. That's the easy part. The hard part is gaining these assets and doing something with these assets. And those have been questionably, but we'll see. I mean, they have plenty of things, and we'll see how Ryan Poles does. Just haven't been impressed early on. I have been impressed with your work at Sports Illustrated, though, Matt. At Matt Verderame, follow him there. Couple pieces, because I know Jody disagrees with one, and I disagree with another. I'll start with the backup quarterbacks. I think you had Marcus Mariota at 13, Gardner Minshew at 4, somewhere in that range. You guys,
that's about right.
Why do you think Gardner's better? And then the second, I just saw your worst 5 free agent signings. I agree wholeheartedly with number 1. I think you hit that nail on the head, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. Number 2, you had Andre Dillard. I thought that was a great signing to get a potential left. Now, if they blow it, if he can't play, obviously, but if you get a left tackle for under $10 million, I love that. I love that roll of the dice from Tennessee. So both of those kind of defend yourself.
I will gladly defend myself. All right. So number 1, with Minshew and Mariota. My problem with Mariota, I'm a big guy on like availability. You need to be able to play. He gets hurt all the time. Now, last year, to his credit, he largely stayed healthy, but he has had a long history of injuries. Now, I will say this. I like his fit in Philly because he can play that style very well.
Yep.
So I like the fit. If you asked me of the 32 teams, where would he be best as a backup, I would have said there or Baltimore. Like, yeah. I think that, because you want to have that running capability built into the game. So I understand completely why the Eagles signed him. And by the way, to be on that list, you're one of the top half. You're in the top half of the backup quarterbacks. So it's not like I ranked him 30th. But my coworker Gilberto Manzano and I worked on that piece, and I think I like Minshew because I think Minshew, if he had to start for a month, can win some games. Now, I don't think he's going to go out there and lead a team, to 11 wins over the course of a regular season. But I do think that he can actually throw the ball some and play. I like him better as a passer than Mariota. But I understand why Philadelphia did what it did based on the fit of the scheme and the offense. It makes sense in that regard. So I think Mariota is a solid backup as backups go. I just worry about his availability. That's always a concern. If he's got to play for a long stretch, can he be durable? He was last year, to his credit. Hasn't always been the case. As for Dillard, the man's barely started any games. He's a first-round pick. Now, I know the Eagles have the best offensive line in football. Fair enough. But to me, was anybody else giving him $30 million? Like, who are they bidding against? That's my thing. I don't understand who are these teams that were like lining up to pay Andre Dillard. I feel like you could have gotten him on a pretty cheap deal. Now, if it works, sure, then he's a cheap left tackle. Fair enough. I have not seen any evidence that this is going to work. The Eagles never believed in him at all after taking him in the first round. I mean, he never got on the field. Now, again, I get that they have a great offensive line. He had years to crack that lineup. Never happened. So I have a hard time when you're paying a guy and we all know this is true too. When you're a first round pick, you're going to get every opportunity to get out on the field. Like you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. You're going to win all the tiebreakers. You couldn't do that for 4 years. You couldn't get on the field?
Yeah. Fair point. The only thing I would say, the outlier there is Jordan Mailata. I mean, they gave him, they defaulted to Andre Dillard all the time. They started a couple years ago. They were rotating, but it was Dillard up first every time. Jody and I talked about it. It was Dillard getting every benefit of the doubt, as you mentioned, Matt.
Yep.
But at some point, Jordan Mailata is, a freak, a physical freak. And Andre got hurt, as he tends to do. And all of a sudden it was Jordan Mailata, and they're like, wow, this guy's just too good. He's just too good.
I hope that every guy on that list proves me wrong, but I'm guessing that a couple of them probably will. Maybe it's Dillard, but
Jimmy's not going to prove you wrong. You're going to be right.
No,
You're going to be right.
That's why he's number one. My most honestly, that's not even about Jimmy as much as it's just about the Raiders and what they're doing. I get you got cheaper by getting Jimmy Garoppolo in there over Derek Carr. You also got worse. And you have Garoppolo, who cannot throw the ball well outside the numbers or down the field. So, you desperately need a tight end, and you trade your tight end. I will never understand the Raiders. And I feel good about that since they haven't won a playoff game in 20 years. Maybe that's
a vote against Jimmy Garoppolo is a vote against Josh McDaniels, is a vote against Mark Davis. It all comes under one big collective umbrella at some point, and I don't think you're getting it wrong. Matty V, always a pleasure, buddy. We're reading you now at SI these days. You're going to be part of the MMQB podcast going forward as well, right?
Yes, I will. I'm looking forward to that once we get that thing rolling again.
Sounds good. We will catch you there as well. And we will, from time to time, ask you to get up in the morning and jump in with us. And see, now I believe the color of his beard. Our previous guest this morning, a guy, Mark Farzetta, doesn't have a quasi black beard. Oh, he's got a black beard, a Lincoln black beard. And he's almost as old as me and McMullen. So he's just full of baloney that he's not actually coloring it. I'm buying into Verderame. You don't use any for men products on that beard, do you?
Not yet. Not yet. Although there's some grays in there. There's some grays. That's okay. Listen, I'm fine with that. I'm not afraid.
You'll catch me sometime within the next couple of decades. Yeah. Matty V, always a pleasure, brother. Appreciate you hopping on.
Take care, guys.
Matt Verderame, now of Sports Illustrated.
Yeah. Distinguished, I like to call it. You gotta get distinguished. You gotta go gracefully into the gray night.
There is no gracefully here. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, here we have Birds 365. We're going to come back, put a bow on the show, put a bow on the week. Stay with us.